look at that on screen. And as we can see from this aerial picture, a very, very large number of people attended the demonstration. Estimates vary. I've had some estimates from people who were there on the spot saying they thought about 800,000. Other people have said million. Tommy Robinson claimed 3 million. I'm going to stick at around that 800 to 1 million people, but certainly it was a lot of people. And clearly a lot of people felt motivated enough to travel into London in order to see exactly what was going on, and also to meet up with other like-minded people. What's your estimates, Ben? Do you go with the Tommy Robinson 3 million, or do you think that's a bit high?
I think it's probably a bit high, and but I think the BBC was saying about 100,000, weren't they? So somewhere between those two. I know someone on the ground who said 1 million, so I think that's probably about right.
Well, I think the BBC was about 150,000. Since we're having a discussion about these events, let's bring Diane in. Welcome, Diane. You were watching a lot of this on Saturday, obviously from a distance, but what was your feeling about the numbers?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing, I think, starting from around 11:30 in the morning until it went off around 6:30 in the evening. And basically what happened was I watched the first part, which was covered by Steve James, or Edge of the Matrix, who started the live stream. And he was just walking around talking to people as he normally does. He's a friend of the UK column, asking people about their opinions about gender ideology and things not necessarily related to what we thought the protest was for. So it was very interesting just to get a feel from people on the ground. And it seemed as though the people who were there generally that he spoke to were there for the right reasons, or they believed they were there for the right reasons in terms of saving England, saving the country, and speaking out for women's rights and the other issues that we would expect to hear. But it seemed as though the crowds just kept growing and growing. And it was really fun. I looked at several different live streams, both from the air and on the ground, the official stream on Tommy Robinson's X channel, as well as just some other individual streamers. And some of them, it was really difficult to see where it was actually coming from, or who was going, or where they were. I do know one person, a friend of mine, who was there, and she said that she was stuck on the bridge over the river, and there were thousands of people both in front of her and behind her, and they were stuck. They couldn't get anywhere. So it does seem as though it would probably be difficult, I would imagine, to truly get a real estimate on the numbers.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, certainly all the reports that I had from people who were present said that overwhelmingly there was a very friendly atmosphere. People were getting on extremely well. The trouble was described to me as some bad boys who were off to one side doing their own thing, but overwhelmingly for the bulk of people there, they were there in a genuine protest, but the mood was very friendly. There was also a great mix of people, black, white, all other colours, religions, people mixing without any problem at all, contrary to the way it was reported. And what about yourself, Ben? Is that the sort of feedback that you had through?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a real mixed crowd. Absolutely.
Okay, so the key question for you, why do you think people were there?
Well, I think that the concept of Britishness is being challenged at the moment in a number of different ways. And actually people were very clearly out on the street because they wanted to try and reclaim some of their national identity. But I would say one of the things that really struck me is coming out of it, not quite sure what national identity was being presented to us. That was my overriding sense of it.
This is a very good point. Well, if that's your opinion, Ben, and I think a very credible one, let's have a listen to the business secretary, Peter Kyle, who was being interviewed about the demonstration.
What worries me most is the divisions in our society and other societies and other democratic societies. There are it's not even the left and the right at the moment. There are communities that are being driven further apart. And there are figures, such as Tommy Robinson, that is able to touch into a sense of disquiet and grievance in the community, in our society. A lot of it goes back to its roots in the financial crisis and the impact that had on communities around the country. And we haven't been able to bring our communities back together again since. So I think these are moments that are klaxon calls to us in public life to redouble our efforts to address the big concerns that people right across our country have, and immigration is a big concern. It's a concern that I and the Prime Minister share very deeply, and we are acting on, and other concerns as well. But we have to do it in a way that can start to bring communities back together again.
So you have a demonstration, 800,000 people, 1 million people together, and the minister describes the problem as people being split apart. I find that interesting, but according to him, Ben, the key problem was financial.
Well, yes, and I'm sure it was all someone else's fault as well. Nothing to do with Peter Carl and Keir Starmer.
Well, we'll consider that in a minute, but yeah, let's reinforce that point because, of course, other reports in the BBC, such as this one, leader of the Lib Dems saying that, well, all of this trouble with the asylum seekers and the hotels, this is all Farage's fault and the Tories' fault. So this is the cheap political blame game. Meanwhile, the uniparty system that we've got in UK continues to do its own thing. I thought it would be worthwhile to actually just do a little bit of assessment on what the whole point of the rally was. And I found that actually I had to go to ChatGPT in order to see what it said. And the first point it raised is that the primary thing there was opposition to what the organisers and many attendees saw as uncontrolled or illegal immigration, which I think is a pretty accurate report. But what was the source that ChatGPT had to use? Well, surprisingly, it was Al Jazeera. Let's go on to the second one here, because it said that a key topic for people present in London was free speech and national identity. The marchers also framed their rally in terms of free speech, British heritage, national culture, and concerns about being heard. Thought that was quite a poignant point. People think that they are not being taken any notice of at the moment, and I think they're absolutely correct. Where was the source for this particular one? Well, it was here, back to Al Jazeera. So we've got AI at work, and it's so desperate to find out what's happening in 1 million people march in London. It's choosing Al Jazeera. Clearly, that's telling us something about our mainstream media. And if I go on to number 3 here, it's people reacting to the current political climate. And what was the source that our illustrious AI used for that? Well, it was the National newspaper. So I found this very interesting that AI was struggling to find out what the reports were about this massive demonstration in London. And of course, with the BBC labelling it about 150,000 people, I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised. But if we take apart what's really happening and why people are really concerned, we can ask this question: what is the current political climate? I've attempted to put some meat on the bones here. That the first one, I think, is we've got warmongering. We've got a government ramping up for war whenever possible, wherever possible. We've also got destruction of the national identity. And mass migration and positive discrimination is clearly part of that. And significantly, this is recognised not only by white British people, this is also recognised by migrants who are now settled in UK. They realise that mass migration is dangerous to all our futures. And this is why at the rally we had people of different cultures and backgrounds and colours. We've got number 3 here, the destruction of the male-female identity and the family. And of course, the woke culture is helping this destruction. And it's that woke culture that's being pushed by the government itself. If we go on number 4, we've got the deliberate sexual grooming of children via religious and sex education and the child sexuality education, which is coming in through UNESCO and the World Health Organization. We've got the suppression of free speech under cover of the Online Harms Bill and a whole range of other legislation which has been coming through. We've got the division of society by malicious targeted media and propaganda. So this is coming from the state itself. It's nothing to do with the demonstrators. It's coming in from the state. And if we go on through, we can put number 7 in here. We've got state-imposed control by means of fabricated fear. COVID, lockdown, and climate change are 2 key ones of those. Number 8, we've got state-facilitated corruption and perversion of Westminster, civil service, and the institutions. And if I bring in a number 9 here, state-facilitated destruction of the national health and well-being by corruption of the food supply and the NHS, amongst other things. So these are all pretty serious and blatantly obvious policies which are coming in from our own government. Just summarise this little bit. This actually was the page that ChatGPT brought up, so you can see how it appeared to me. I'm just going to drop over the top of this Gaza and Ukraine because, of course, it appears that this particular rally, there was positive support for Israel and presumably everything it was doing in Gaza. And apart from mention of the tragic death of the young Ukrainian lady, nothing was really being said about stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine. So there were some rather interesting undertones. But if I just end this segment here, I thought it pertinent to bring up the definition which the government is using of extremism. We've got 1, negate or destroy the fundamental rights and freedoms of others, undermine, overturn or replace the UK system of liberal parliamentary democracy, and 3, intentionally create a permissive environment for others to achieve these results. So the definition to me of extremism seems to fit our own government in the first instance, much more than it does the demonstrators, the 1 million people protesting in London. And if I end on this one here from Protect UK, if we have a look at their definition of extreme right-wing terrorism, of course, all of those 1 million people on the streets were being branded as extreme right-wing by British mainstream media, a quite disgusting accusation. But it seems to me that the label is deliberately designed to attack society itself. So I'm putting some complex things in there, Ben, but it seems to me the biggest threat comes from our own government, not the 1 million people on the streets.
Not all of the 1 million people on the streets, actually. I think this is the issue, right? Is that these things get treated by the commentariat and by politicians as these homogenous lumps of people where everyone believes the same things, and that's just fundamentally not true, actually. So, some people in the chat box pointing out, as we'll get into, actually, that the people behind this, heavy Zionist influence, very political, lots of conflicts of interest, particularly with some of the big money people involved and who were featured. But the everyday, man and woman on the street, I think most of them were there for the right reasons. Absolutely. And they see their country slipping away. They want to go out and do something about it. Absolutely. Good on them, quite frankly. One of the things I was particularly happy about looking at this over the weekend was that there was no violence, no significant violence. I know there were a few arrests, but there was the potential for this to go quite badly wrong, actually, and it didn't. And I'm glad things were kept calm. And obviously one of the best people around to help keep things calm is Elon Musk. Let's have a little listen to what he had to say.
Violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Today, Elon, I think the British public are telling the world that they're ready to fight back.
Good. Yes.
Come on, Great Britain.
Brian just said that's pathetic. I completely agree with you. Notice he got really very little reaction there from the crowd, actually. But there's Musk saying, you've got to fight back or die. That's his message.
Isn't that an extreme right-wing message coming from Musk?
I don't know if it's right wing or whatever it is, but he's hardly trying to reduce tensions in the country, which I think would probably be a good idea given everything that's been going on. And let's just have a little look at his T-shirt. This really grabbed me. You got the little one eye symbol there. The full T-shirt says, "What would Orwell think?" And I think Orwell would think that Elon Musk is a very dangerous and very scary man, actually. That's what I think Orwell would think. This wasn't just limited to Musk. There was a lot of incitement generally around things like the ISIS flag being attacked by some Maoris on stage who'd been flown in for this purpose. Again, this is really stretching the limits of Britishness here. Like there's a very odd mixture of different cultures and different things happening. And then obviously they went after the Palestine flag, and this is not necessary. This is incitement for me. There are horrific things happening in Palestine right now. This is a very pro-Israel event. Tommy Robinson himself is a proud Zionist. There is a very strong case to be made that that's ultimately who's controlling him, and then ultimately, he's setting this event up. Should we assume that that's who's behind this event? I think it's probably quite safe to say that it is. Seeing this kind of stuff on stage is not good for me, no. And this just makes it very easy for people on the other side of the argument to point at and say, look, violence, look, hatred, and actually it's just fundamentally not helpful, right? And of course, there was a counter-protest, as is always the way at the moment, right? So there's a protest happening, and lo and behold, there is a counter-protest happening. This pattern is repeated every single time one of these things happens. I reported on an event in Plymouth earlier in the year. Same thing was happening there. I went to an event in Plymouth last Sunday. We had exactly the same thing happening. You had the flags on one side, and then you had Stand Up to Racism on the other side. Stand Up to Racism behind this, the March Against Fascism, Unite Against Tommy Robinson. It's all about Tommy. Yeah, he's the figurehead for all of this. This was run by, or certainly led by, Narinder Kaur. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The woman holding the sign up on the right-hand side there. She is a Pakistani woman from Newcastle. And this is the feminine left wing. So this was a women-only march. You can just see that it says Women Against the Far Right on the big banner just behind her. So this is the feminine left wing against the supposedly masculine right wing, and I think that the Tommy Robinson march is probably dominated by men. I don't think it was all men, right? But they're setting this up as a very deliberate. This is another divide and rule: left v right, man v women, and this is about stopping effective reconciliation in the country that needs to happen in order for us to effectively progress past this stuff, right? And Stand Up to Racism, we talked about before, basically directly linked into the top of the Labour Party, linked into the military intelligence agencies, very unclear where all the money is coming from for them to churn these signs out. I mean, they're putting hundreds of thousands of these signs out on a weekly basis. This, we can just see here, was very closely linked into the unions. You got Unison, TUC, Unite, and et cetera, et cetera. And we need to have a bit more of a look into this for future shows. But to get the supposedly union-aligned, sneering, metropolitan, liberal, progressive view on the march, let's have a little listen to Paul Mason.
What you're seeing here is probably...
Oh.
Someone going to run.
Bit of a problem there.
What you're seeing here is probably the biggest far-right demonstration ever held in Britain. And I've been among this crowd, and I think it's obvious that many of the people here are wearing our flag as a badge of their own white identity and as a mark of hatred of our multicultural, multinational society. No, there are more progressive people than this. What this is the radicalised mass base of the Reform Party and the Tories. Most people here would have voted Tory, some might have voted Labour, but this is by and large a plebeian, working class, explicitly racist demonstration And I'm afraid to say it will very likely descend into violence when it gets to Whitehall.
Military intelligence asset Paul Mason talking about the flag as essentially being a symbol of hatred for multi-ethnic Britain. He describes the group as the radicalised mass base of reform and conservative voters, and he even used the word plebeian. He called them plebs. Isn't that amazing?
No, it's not amazing, actually.
No,
it's not amazing.
I mean, it tells you a lot about what these people actually think, right? And this same line of thought extended to Richard Bergen, a member of Parliament. This tweet here I thought was quite amazing, talking about the fact that we are in an incredibly dangerous moment, which I do actually agree with, by the way, but probably not for the same reasons that he's saying. And essentially, he goes on to say, we not only face the threat of a far-right government coming to power for the first time in our history, I guess he means reform, but also a violent far-right street movement on a scale not seen here in decades, if ever. Apparently, that's what this march was. This is a violent far-right street movement, and then goes on to say this street movement, led by convicted criminal Tommy Robinson, who's not really the leader of this thing, he just happened to organise this march, is especially dangerous for Black, Muslim, Jewish and other minority communities. Right, so there's plenty of black people there. It was definitely anti-Muslim, I will certainly say that. But the idea that this is dangerous for Jewish people, I think, is absolutely crazy, because very clearly, you know, the whole thing was avowedly Zionist. And in fact, we had this guy, Avi Yemeni, from Rebel News, was wandering around broadcasting. He was a former IDF sniper, basically bragged about killing children in Gaza, effectively running a Zionist control operation, as I would see it. And he may well be the guy who's pulling Tommy Robinson's strings, I don't know. And just to sum up, this was a message that I was sent by a mate of mine who was actually there and said it was good. There was well over 1 million people. The original police report said over 3 million, MSM said 110,000, all very peaceful. Majority of the police we came across real decent, smiling, chatty. Right police came out once most people had left so that they can antagonise and get reactions for the news. Sounds about right.
It does.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you very much for that. Diane, let's bring you back with us. And what have you got?
Yeah, I just have a few comments and a little bit more coverage to add to this discussion of Saturday. One thing I want to show is a little bit more from the Elon Musk confrontation between himself and the audience, which was along with Tommy Robinson. So let's play the rest of that.
And then you see how much violence there's on the left, with our friend Charlie Cook getting murdered in cold blood this week, and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with.
So that brings up a couple of things for me. First of all, the right versus left, of course, which he repeated several times. And I just want to say, Ben, I see your point about what you were saying about the right versus left in this particular situation. However, I would like to point out that I am not on the left because I am a woman, and I want to preserve my own rights as an actual woman, as opposed to some women who put themselves on the left, or those who say they are women, and that's a very different situation. So, but the problem, I think, is that when I was seeing some of the sort of counter demonstration going on, the counter protests, where were these women, actual or trans, who were sort of trying to take their own position on the situation, but they were so small in numbers compared to the actual official part of the demonstration. I think it's interesting also to note the timing of this event, with this being on the 13th of September. So we've got just 2 days after the anniversary of 9/11, which is still a very sore spot for lots of people around the world, particularly Americans, of course. We had the Charlie Kirk situation. And I know there's a lot of speculation circulating around the internet at this point around all of the things surrounding whatever happened with Charlie Kirk. But the timing is also, again, very interesting. That was on the eve of 9/11. And we see all the Charlie Kirk messages were weaved throughout the entire day. As I said, I watched all of it. We also see here, there's another photo of him saying, God bless Charlie Kirk, never forgotten. So it's like 9/11, never forget. And this was a man holding this photo of him on the stage behind where Tommy and the other speakers, who again, of course, were, as has been said earlier, Israeli supporters, Zionist supporters, generally speaking, were the ones who were out there. And we also have the death of the Irena Zaruska situation, the Ukrainian refugee who was supposedly stabbed in the North Carolina in recent times. So all of this, they're positioning Tommy as the hero, as the god, and all of the people who were speaking and introducing him throughout the official event were saying, "Oh, we wouldn't be here without Tommy. He's like this god worship almost figure that they were making him out to be, as though he's just this average working class chap who's going to save the country." When actually, again, I think that most of the people in attendance were probably in that situation of just wanting to do what's best for the country and returning to a more traditional form of Britain and England. But I also think that if you look at who actually organized the event and how it was supported and how an average person could not take over London at this level, and then to have all of this happening while just the scope of the event, there was video screens all the way up and down where you could watch the event for people who couldn't get close to the stage. And there's absolutely no way that an individual person who doesn't feel as though they can even speak up for themselves in the country at this stage would be able to take over the capital city at this level. So I think there's some questions to ask about what's behind this and what drove it, and again, what is actually going on in the background. So those people who say what they were out for looking out for Tommy and trying to help him because he's done all these great things for us, I think needs to maybe reconsider their position just a bit. Brian?
Diane, thank you for that. And we'll certainly be talking about this more in extra after the news today. But key bit is a lot of very, very good people on the streets. They need to know exactly what is attacking them in this country. And I think getting information across as everything that's happening through and with the UK's government is the right way to go. But we'll deal with this more in extra time. Now, big thank you as always to everybody wherever you are in the world who's supporting UK Column. We can only do what we do with your financial support and help. If you are watching or listening in to us for today's news and you're not already a supporter, then if you go to the UK Column website and click here to support our work, you can become a member or make a donation or both, or purchase through the shop. And we'll be very grateful for that. Now, tonight at 7 p.m, we've got a repeat with germ warfare, talking about all big events being fabricated. That's with Nick Hudson, which I think is an interesting topic and something we should all keep our attention on, because nothing at the moment is quite as it seems. Also, UK Column on location in York, coming up Saturday, the 18th of October. The key thing is that tickets are now sold out, so we're looking at the live stream. I'm going to emphasise this. The tickets are now sold.
Well, hey.
Yes, a huge thank you to everybody who's bought one, and we really look forward to seeing you. But we're also encouraging people to join us via the online view. And of course, if you do that, we will be speaking to everybody, whether you're with us in person or further afield. Diane, you've got this one here for the Food and Health Festival coming up on the 28th September.
Yes, I've mentioned this in the last couple of weeks as well, but just as a reminder that this is coming up, sponsored by Common Knowledge Edinburgh, of which I'm a member of the executive committee. It will be a focus on alternative health solutions, local food, the importance of real food, the importance of farming. So there'll be some vendors, there'll be some talks throughout the day, including Charles Mallett, who is coming up to join us to speak from his perspective on farming. So I think it'll be a great day. Tickets are free. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the location and the postcode are right there on the flyer. So please join us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Diane. Well, Ben, back to you. And the subject is chaos, the undertone of UK.
Yes, chaos agents. Again, I think